And we're live. I'm Aaron Jack, and this is Artist to Art, a photographer's portrait with Neil. This is going to be so good. This is going to be so good. Neil is so awesome. Welcome, 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 welcome. Hey, Aaron. Hey, Jess. Hey, everybody. Everybody's so awesome. Feel free to comment. This is Artist to Art. Artist to Art, a photographer's portrait. Boop, boop. I'm Aaron Jack. Welcome. Hey, Vivian. Welcome back. This is gonna be awesome. I'm so excited. We've got Neil on soon. In a minute. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of an awesome time. Hey, Carlos. I'm gonna put up the titles here. A photographer's portrait. A whole series that will culminate in a showing at Showfields that I'm curating on August 25th at 5 p.m. So make sure to mark that in your calendars. And we're getting Neil on here. We are having an amazing photographer on here, Neil.
Hello?
Hey! I think the camera might be reversed.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Okay, oh, there we go. It. Perfect. Welcome.
It's my first Instagram Live, so excuse me for the technical difficulty.
I feel very honored. I feel very honored, as should all of our guests today that you got here to do the first Instagram Live. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, like most of us, I've spent the last 5 months on Zoom and every other video software out there, but I have not done Instagram yet. But I already know, like, you're supposed to put the phone a little bit higher so you don't see the double chin. I know all the rules of looking good on video. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a whole thing. So you're on Instagram Live. Everybody can comment at the bottom. So you're welcome to say hi or answer any questions, or I can answer any questions. So if anybody has anything, they can all comment down there as we talk with each other and converse. And it's this is a conversation. So, and then we're going to see some of your work. So
that sounds great.
Yeah, so you've been in Queens, right?
I am Queens, yes. I'm in my bedroom right now, yes.
Cool. So how's the quarantine been?
Well, if you remember back when it was really hitting New York pretty hard in, Jesus, I don't remember the time anymore, probably like March or in April, Queens was pretty much like the epicenter at the time, and it was pretty scary. It really felt like at the time like it was as close to feeling the anxiety of living in like a war zone because you were afraid to go outside. You know, now of course the rest of the country is caught up and everyone's miserable. So yeah, it's I mean now the New York rate is pretty low. But like everyone else, we're fearing in fall it's going to get bad again.
Right. And your first thing that we're going to talk about is about the quarantine. And so that's why I wanted to kind of preface that with where you're at and what's going on and why. And oh wait, that's the other series. We'll come back to that.
Yes.
We'll come back to the series. We're going to start here, I think that's the...
Yes.
That's here, right? That's where we want to start.
Yes, so just through some weird circumstance of events, I've spent my quarantine with my mother and my ex-wife, which in itself sounds like, you know, some bad novel. But it's been my experience the last 5 months. My mother was in Florida, my ex-wife was in California, and they both had come here for certain reasons, and then no one could leave. You know, sort of like a Hotel California in reverse. And part of the experience has been photographing the three of us together during this time. And it's been creative, and it's also been partly therapy.
Wow. How did you start this series and how did they agree?
Um, I think, someone who's interested in photography, it's like what I like to do. Most of the time I did street photography before, as you'll see my earlier stuff. But here, all of a sudden, I was trapped in the house and started taking pictures of the three of us. And I just somehow it lent itself to, so a lot of the photos I ended up taking are like staged reenactments of stuff that really happened, but I did it again. Mostly because, when you're really living life, it's hard to take a photo of yourself because, like when you're scrubbing down I don't know if you did it, but like we were one of those families who like scrubbed down every box we got from the grocery store. So, at the time I said, oh, this would be a good photo, but when you're so busy doing it yourself, there's no time to take out the camera. So then the next day I said, let's reenact what we did. And it was an interesting experience for me because I think I sort of thought of photography more as like documentary style, like capture what's real. But, you have to be an observer to, in a way, being a photographer, you have to step outside of what's going on. And here I was so involved in it, I sort of pushed everything to be more staged. It gave me more insights into photography also. Like what is real, and can you get some real emotion from something that's staged?
Wow. What did you learn? I mean, I'm just curious all these things that you learned because it sounds like you went through a whirlwind of change yourself and learned so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and I also I'm not a person who usually puts myself in photos, but I ended up being in a lot of the own photos myself just because I became part of the story. And so, yeah, it was partly a self-discovery, and also reconnect, like what is family and, what are responsibilities. I mean, as you can see, my mother is there. She's in her 80s. So that determined a lot. Even now, I'm pretty much still, I mean, I'm not quarantined, but she's still here. And she's like we all know, most people who got seriously ill or died during the corona, even now, were older people or people who had, medical issues. So I've been afraid of doing too much because I don't want to bring anything back to her. So I haven't been on a subway in 5 months. I went to my first grocery store like last week. So even now, while people are starting to like go back into the real world, I'm still mostly spending 90% of my time at home. And, the photography has been a way of dealing with that.
And it seems like you've dealt with it with a lot of humor.
Yeah, and I give credit to my mother and my ex-wife for like agreeing to participate in all this and being my models, and it's been an interesting. I've learned a lot on how to work with people and how to collaborate, even with, as you probably know, the worst people to work with is your own family, because it's been interesting. I've learned to communicate better and to collaborate more. Now, after 5 months of doing this, when I take a shot, I discuss it with them. Then we all go to I plug in my laptop to the TV. We all look at all the shots, and I have them help me pick out which shot is better. Because, now they're both becoming a little bit of divas now that they know that, when I first started this, no one was seeing them, but gradually a lot of people were watching this on Instagram, and they became aware that this was happening. So it was just an interesting, it opened my eyes up also to, women, I'm going to get in trouble, whatever I say here, but like like some weeks I couldn't shoot if, if someone forgot to color their hair that week. So these little things I never thought about before suddenly became an issue where, I had to think about my subject matters more than just taking the shot and not really giving a damn. Because without them, I had no project.
Wow.
So it was, it's like in Hollywood where, like when you're working with Barbara Streisand, you have to like give her own trailer and take the red M&Ms out of the bucket. So I mean, it wasn't that extreme, but there was a certain amount of, you know what, let's take these shots today, and then later on we'll go to Dunkin' Donuts and I'll buy you, donuts. So I've learned how to smooth talk my way into a picture in a way.
That's, I just want to say that's incredible given your subjects, that you are a superhuman for such things.
I mean, there's a number of shots where the story is actually more interesting than sometimes a shot. I mean, there's like one shot where we're all in a bathtub together, and that was like based on a real event where there's been. I live in a yeah. So I'm living in right now in a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and the lack of privacy has just gone out the window. So I don't know, for some reason during the pandemic I started taking baths because it was like my way. It was almost like a way of that became my room because my ex-wife sort of took over my bedroom a little bit, so I would hide out in there. But within 5 minutes, someone else would walk in there having to use the bathroom or something. So I said, the next day, let's take a shot, to imitate that. So I got in the bathroom is like, I don't know, 6 feet big, wide. So I'm there in the bathtub. There's a tripod and a camera and a soft box. And I'm tethered to my laptop, and I'm getting my mother to stand, that's her leg, and that's Sophia's shaving her leg. And my mother was so freaking out that the light was going to fall into the bathtub and electrocute me. And it was like, it was the most tense and unpleasant shoot of the entire experience. Of course, naturally, this became like the most popular, it's always like this shot that was the worst experience becomes the best shot, So it was, it was an interesting experience. I mean, again, I have to give them credit for doing this with me.
Wow.
And to see me, and it's like I'm in like half undressed in half these shots, and for them to play along, especially my mother, But Sophia, who's my ex-wife, would sometimes tell my mother like, while he undresses, close your eyes. I'm going like, Mom, Sophia, my mother's seen me, half unclothed before. But that was like when you were 5 years old. So, but it's been very technically. I mean, because I've been lighting because the place is very dark. So I've had to learn how to tether my laptop to the camera and to light in limited spaces. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I'm sort of pretty proud of the stuff that we've gotten.
Wow. Let's see some more. We've got some more that we can look through.
This is we mostly got delivery from Amazon and Instacart, and this was the very first time we got it delivered, and we were like freaking out, like, do we open the door? We felt rude. Some guy knocks on the door with your stuff, and my mother was going to answer the door. Mom, don't answer the door. It was like, we felt like really rude to this guy. Not that he wants to see us either, but we told him to leave everything outside. So, eventually everyone went through this experience. Actually, a lot of people saw these photos and connected to it because they were going through the same experience.
I think a lot of people have gone through the same experience. I know I was freaked out for a long time. I mean,
Right.
I just didn't know. I mean, now I think I'm a little less freaked out, but know like more like how to be cautious or where to be cautious around, or like how have you
Right.
found that process like to like of acclimation or knowing like how much to be out there?
Yes, it's been a slow, like I said, I think because my mother is here, it's been a slower process. And I mean, I have friends who are already like, hanging out and eating outside, and we haven't done that yet. So I'm slowly, you know, uh, we're slowly doing things. We have gone out once or twice, but we've been pretty cautious,
Yeah,
and you get into certain habits. But a lot of what's interesting about the photos is that most of the early ones were humorous. Because it was the way we dealt with, this crazy scenario of, living with your mother and ex-wife and how we navigate that. Because I get along with my ex-wife, but her place in Los Angeles had some sort of disaster. And she asked if she can stay here for like a couple of weeks, not realizing it was going to end up being like a couple of months. So, all of a sudden, it was a lot of, there was a lot of psychological stuff we had to get over, and the later photos now are being a little bit more, I find, not as funny, because even though we feel safer, I can feel a little bit more like sadness, like we're getting a little tired of this, and we're missing people, and this again, I think that other people are connecting with this. I mean, the last photo we just did was about the three of us hugging, because I mean, it sounds corny, but like Sophia read an article about how important touch is, and I don't know about you, but like other than these two people, I haven't seen a friend and haven't like hugged anyone in like 5 months, other than these two people.
I don't think this is
So
what you're talking about. I'm just looking through.
and so yeah, this that's I'm cutting my mother's chin hairs, so we're getting more intimate than we really want to be. So and in a way, I've reconnected with my mother as like an adult, meaning like the three of us could watch like Game of Thrones, whatever. I don't have to hide my eyes if I see nudity. It's almost like we've moved beyond somewhat. I mean, this is but sometimes we revert back to the old. With everyone, me and my mother revert back to the mother-son things, and me and my ex-wife are trying really hard to like be like friends, and family members, but we've gotten into back to one or two of the fights we had when we were married over the same stuff. So it's hard to like overcome roles that you had for many years.
Wow, it seems like a giant soap opera that's been playing out
Exactly. Yes.
in like an incredible one that would go on prime time.
I mean, so here's an example. Early on, when we tried to be more humorous, we were having one of our fights as usual, and it was like awkward having my mother listen to it because, and so the next day we said like, let's recreate it like, my mother's the referee. So yeah, this was the first example of really using like almost photography as therapy, and which was a very different experience than being like the observer, like, or taking a portrait where you're captured, here it's like about you, and then I put myself in it as well. I have a lot of friends who take self-portraits. I never did that before. So that was, and even technically, it took a while to figure out how to focus when you yourself are in the picture, and there's three people, and then you're pretty much shooting by remote. So, I'm missing like being on the street and taking pictures of the street and shooting other people. But this is my first like real like project.
Wow.
This is what I'm saying. Like as time got on, it got a little bit more less funny and a little bit more melancholy. You know, even though we're three people here. Again, I'm sure we all. I don't know if you're living with someone right now yourself. I mean, it's weird because I have friends who are single, living by themselves, and we sometimes like the grass is always greener. You know, like I go like, you've been living by yourself for 5 months. You know, you must be so lonely, and they're like, yeah, you know, it is, but I'd rather be doing this than like living with my mother. You know, or like because even though we're here with each other and it's great having that comfort, it becomes, you know, you get tired of each other and you like, so this is like, you know, one of those moody photos of me like, you know, wishing that I was, you know, somewhere else than with the same people every day, you know, talking about what we're going to make for dinner tonight.
Wow.
And this was again like a comic way of, my mother was going downstairs for the first time by herself. This was like after 3 months. And the transition's been a little hard for me because this happens a lot to people with their parents as they get old. You know, you always hear like the roles changed. And my mother, even though she's 80, she's a lot more social than I am. She went all out. She goes plays cards. She goes to the theater in Manhattan. So she's a pretty healthy, you know, senior. But during this, because we were so afraid of her, we started putting limits on her. Like she couldn't, you know, she couldn't go out to like go shopping. And I think of all the people in this household, she's fared the worst in a way. And I think a lot of older people, you know, it's like, yeah, some of the way it's sort of upsetting to me because I've seen some of her other friends, well, at least us, or anyone who's like of a certain age or under, you know, sort of says to themselves like, you know, in like a year this will all be over and life will go back to normal. But I think people at a certain age almost are thinking like, wow, this is like, the past is now over and I'm not really sure about the future, you know. She even said, we looked at a picture of the wall, like she once went to Paris and said like, I'm glad I went to Paris a few years ago because I might never go again. And that was like depressing to hear, you know, like, you know, because who knows how long this will go on. And yeah, during that month in March, you know, I knew a few people her age who passed away or went to like nursing homes. So it really hit that generation really hard.
Wow.
And, you know, and so it sometimes made me upset about, you know, the whole debate about wearing the masks. So, you know, the whole, you know, because I can see that it's certain, even though I understand that it's annoying to wear the mask, you know, there are people at risk for this, but, you know, and it's not such a big deal. So we had a couple of episodes when we first started going out, like walking in the park, where I'm pretty like even keel, but my ex-wife is more, she doesn't take any shit, basically. And there was like one guy who like was jogging, like a burly guy, and she said, you know, yelled at him, you know, hey, put on your mask. And the guy came back and said, you know, like, what the fuck, you know, and, you know, Sophia's like looking at me like, you know, like, I'm going like, oh, Sophia, listen, I mean, I hope you don't think that I'm going to like start a fight with this guy, you know. But you know, I heard a lot of those tensions. You know, I don't know if it's sort of fading a little bit now, but for like a month or so, there was like, people were fighting over like whether or not wear a mask. I mean, I think it's still going on, and maybe not in New York as much, but in Texas and Florida.
Yeah, and a lot of other places, I think. But I think it's very like poignant, your experience, because you almost went through this in a very intense. I think you went through this whole thing in a very intense way, in a very small, limited space that
Right.
justified it. And you've been looking back and reflecting on it through actually recreating those moments, and that's, I think, really fascinating.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of, I mean, right, it wasn't that long that it was really bad in New York, maybe 2 months. But really, I almost feel, you know, PTSD from the experience where, like,
I mean, that's not funny.
yeah,
That's really, yeah. I mean, it's strange. It's like it's funny in one sense, but really not in others. But I mean, it's funny because you made it fun.
yes,
You've made the PTSD experience that I think so many of us have or from this
hmm
thing, but you've enabled it to be humorous. And how do you find that, like, that transition for you?
I think there's a long tradition of, I mean, I actually read a little bit about that because I remember when I used to like the old TV show like MASH, where they were like, the doctors in the Korean War, and they were always making jokes. And I'm sure even in the Holocaust, that's the way you sort of stay sane, is like, making sarcasm. So I guess we have a sarcastic, you know, uh, family, and this was a way of dealing with it, with the humor. Like I'm saying, actually, the humor has slightly been slowly dripping out of the later photos, and I'm a little worried about that because, because I knew when it was funny, at least we knew that it was almost like the shooting was cathartic. You would take it, and I mostly just put it on Instagram, and then it was like, oh, okay, we expressed ourselves, how uncomfortable we were, and now it's over, and now let's move on to the next day. And yeah, I don't know, I'm like talking to like my therapist now, but the last couple of weeks or so, it's been harder to find humor. I mean, without getting political, I think our administration and that type of stuff is like makes you or made us angry in some way. So it's like life seems less funny in a way because you want to know when's this going to end at a certain point.
Yeah, yeah, that's really so intense, and how to keep the humor when it
When things are not funny anymore, really,
right,
you
right.
know.
It's like, oh, it's like, what's going on here?
This was probably one of the more intense shots. This was early on when well, this is my ex-wife and me, and we started off. I mean, we're good friends, but we're not married, and we haven't been married for several years. So I mean, she took over my bedroom basically, and I started sleeping in the living room with a pull-out uh, bed. And each of these pictures, I put a little story there. And this one was about one night. I forget what was going on. I think it was like when there was a lot of deaths in New York. We ended up sort of like sharing the bed and like undressing and watching TV together, watching CNN. And there was no. Again, I'm saying this publicly. We didn't consummate whatever, but we were husband and wife for many years, and we needed the comfort of and for the last couple of months we've hugged a lot more in a sort of a weird, it's not it's like a sort of a, we're not married, we're not brother and sister, we're not really family, but we're a man and woman, and we needed some comfort. So this was a hard picture to take, actually, because I asked her. I said, we were lying there watching. I said, look, this is like sort of a touching moment. Could I put the camera up and take a picture of it? And she said, okay, whatever. So So it means a lot to me, this photo. Even, I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's like, this was a real moment that happened. This is like 10 minutes after. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm feeling a little like touched even by like seeing it. So this was an example where it wasn't humorous. So I've gone back and forth from like, being humorous and then sometimes realizing this is not. So it's been a good expression of the different sides of myself. I mean, humor is really important to me, but I don't want to use it to hide real. You hear so many stories about like, I mean, I've mentioned this a couple of times with friends, like when Robin Williams, he seemed like the funniest guy in the world and was humorous, and then you found out he was like depressed, but whenever he was on TV, he was like the most funniest person. And I think humor, if you take it too much, could end up hiding your real feelings. So I've tried to go back and forth from like being funny, which is authentic, to like, okay, what's not funny about this? So that's been a good, experience in dealing with both of the sides, And it's interesting, when you put stuff on Instagram, which I did, like we all know, we all become a little bit of suckers for likes. So the humorous ones would get, 3 times as many likes as something like this. But I stayed strong and realized that, like, not to be led by your audience in a way, that you got to be authentic to yourself. And I think that was an important step also, like, not to let, I mean, just because some funny shot of you in the bathtub, gets like hundreds of likes, not to just keep on doing that.
Right. To have both sides of that be seen and to talk about them.
Yes, and I think also the funny ones become funnier when there is like real stuff in between, or else it just becomes like an Adam Sandler movie, where just one joke after another. So there is a certain narrative structure that I lived in Los Angeles and worked in the film industry before I came back here. So there is a certain amount of understanding of, narratives and that type of stuff. And I think that comes out. I think that's one of the reasons why I reverted to staged pictures, because I understand how, sometimes staging can be as emotional as something real. But not real is the wrong word, but as like, as a journalist, when you take a photo, you're not supposed to like, it's just supposed to be what's there in front of you. But that's hard when you're doing it for just your family members, because, I mean, I think if you have kids, that's good, because they run around and you got shots to do. But when you start becoming middle-aged, most of you sit around, eat, and watch TV. So it's not very good photos, Well, actually, I'm looking for the first time of people writing stuff on the bottom.
Oh, yeah. People,
I didn't even know it. Hi, Lori. I didn't even see you there.
Yeah, you're welcome to look through some of that and respond to anything if there's anything you particularly, or if anybody has any questions. I haven't seen any particular questions people, but a lot of people I think are just so moved by your work. As
And I've been moved. I mean, one of the things I did was I joined a forum on Facebook of like people quarantining, and it's become a way to share other than just on Instagram. So it's people from around the world, like, sharing their quarantine photos, like almost like this has become a genre in its own now. And, talk about people thinking it's hoax, 5 minutes on this site, and you think they're crazy because people in Iran, people in Italy, people in like Jerusalem, people in Africa are all like dealing with the same crap, wearing, it's like, it really made you see how small the world is, you know, when something like this happens, because there's no borders. And just as people have told me that they really, you know, they got something out of these photos, you know, all I could say is I got exactly the same from other people, because I would see, like, you know, someone whose picture of their mother, you know, I've seen so much, like, funny and touching stuff, you know, people whose, like, father died and they couldn't go to a funeral, so they did, like, a Zoom funeral, and they would just take pictures of the screen, and then, you know, pictures of people in masks in unlikely places. There's even a couple of doctors who started documenting their experience in the hospital yeah, this is like, so yeah, I felt a lot more connected to the world through photography, not only taking it, but looking at other people's photos.
What's the name of this Facebook group, Vivian asks?
Oh, they're gonna kill me. Maybe
You don't have
Lori.
to.
No, actually, because they would love it. But it's something like, they changed their name. I think it's like confinement, photography during confinement. First, it was like confinement during quarantine, and then as things changed, they moved. You know, and also when the Black Lives Matter events happened and George Floyd, it was like, all of a sudden, it was like things, oh yeah, photographers under confinement. That was an interesting, like, wrench in the whole story, because I have so many photographer friends who went out to document what's going on, and it's almost like, you know, the world was going, was changing in a new way. And, but I pretty much kept on. I mean, I didn't want to. I mean, sometimes I felt guilty, like, keeping on doing this sort of very small domestic story, when all of a sudden, world of, you know, I could be out there, you know, documenting what's going on or protesting against Trump. But again, I felt like this was my place. I didn't want to get anyone sick. So, but at the same time, I really appreciated seeing my friends out there to see what's going on. They would get better photos than, like, the newspapers in a way. So that became so that this photographers under confinement sort of changed at a certain point, because some people started going out, you know, to document what's going on in the real world, and some of the, you know, older people or people with sick or had immune difficulties stayed at home. And now is the whole issue, like, a lot of my friends have kids. So they're now, like, you know, what they're going to do in fall. So they're now documenting, you know, having to teach their kids at home. So it's like, it's been an interesting time. And, you know, I'm glad that I've been able to show one story among hundreds and thousands, you know. So I think, you know, it's unique in some way, because at least in America, you know, you're not living with your mother and ex-wife. So that I was able to sort of put this new twist on the story in a way. Though I do know a lot of younger people who have moved back with their parents.
Right. It's a thing. It's a thing. And
yeah.
And it's and a lot of people are living in very different situations, or, you know, and even now as it goes on, I think a lot more people are moving in. So it's almost like you had the first taste of this, where a lot of people are following you.
Right. And I think that, you know, we didn't stay together pure economic reasons. But, you know, as the time goes on, we've been thinking, you know, that's an issue also for a lot of people. It's like, you know, a lot of people out of work. You know, I haven't really, like, worked that much in the last couple of months. And as painful as it is, you know, living with 3 people in this like little apartment, we've actually saved a little money. You know, we've been cooking all the time, not eating out. So, you know, we've actually been okay with money. But I'm sure a lot of people who, right, I mean, if you're a young person who just got out of college and you're looking to get a job, it might not be that easy. And, you know, maybe you don't want to live in New York right now with all the hardships here. So maybe, you know, I know a few people who went back to home, you know. I don't know how healthy that is in the long run. But I mean, I don't know how healthy it is that I'm here in the same place with my mother also. So yeah, I mean, so as I'm talking about these things, it's like, you know, I understand that originally we were going to talk about photography, which this is, but this project has been so personal, and it's like I find it hard to separate the photography from like my life, which I don't know, might not be the healthiest thing either. You know, I mean, I could talk about the tech, you know, like how I took the shot and how I put the light, and that's interesting to me. But I go back to really talking about the impetus of why I'm in the bathtub, and even today, most of our fights are about the lack of space and the lack of boundaries and stuff like that, and, which is hard. You know, I mean, sometimes I look at my friends who are living in the suburbs and have a huge yard outside, and it's like, man, because there's normally people who are like jealous of people who live in the big cities. You know, they feel like I would live in the suburbs. You know, the guy in the city can go to a theater and museum all the time. So now it's sort of like the revenge of the suburbanites, where it's like, man, you know, I wish I lived with a big yard. You know, there's nothing to do in New York anyway. There's no museums to go to. You know, it's like, it's just concrete right now.
And if anybody has any questions, feel free to at least put them in the comments. And I know a lot of people are saying, you know, it's like Tiffany said that it's so relatable. Lori said, as many people can't pay rent, we're trying to see other weird living situations. So I think you've described like a weird living situation, how you've been able to cope so well, or you know, or in your own particular way, but I think been able to at least, you know, what is the other side.
And I think whatever photography I do or next project, I think I will have gained a lot from sticking up. Earlier on, you asked me to like present to you some projects that I've done, and I sent you some of my old street photography. But really, this is like my first project. I mean, I've been shooting for many years now, but you know, I've mostly done like photos, and not an ongoing project. So this has been an interesting experience to stay on something for 5 months, and frankly, I think I'm probably gonna be with them for another few more months still. So I'm just gonna keep on shooting, and to see, because I've always heard when people like photographers do a project, they don't really know where it's going. Sometimes it goes in a different direction. So I mean, I didn't start taking these pictures as a project. It was more sort of I'm home, and I got to shoot something. And originally I did try a documentary style, and I just couldn't. It just didn't work because, you know. So this works better where they're more relaxed, and I do think sometimes by recreating it, you can get an emotion that feels truer than if I would have just snapped it, you know, at that moment. But as a photographer, that's interesting to me, that topic, because I really did like, you know, grow up thinking that photography was like journalism, you know, and that this was sort of cheating in some way. So I've sort of changed my mind a little bit about that.
Wow. That's amazing. In like 5 months, you've been able to change your mind. You've been able to change so much about what you thought was up and down, it feels like.
And working with people, you have to work. I mean, in the beginning, there was some argument. I really think I went into it thinking like, when you go when you take street photography, you're pretty much out there by yourself, and you're sneaking around taking photos, unless you take a portrait. But here, I really needed their participation. They had to like, stand there for like 20 minutes while I set up the light, and in the beginning, I was getting a little pissy. Like I'm Francis Ford Coppola. That they're supposed to just sort of like do what I say. And it doesn't work, especially with your ex-wife. It's like, she's more like, I'm giving you another 10 minutes and then I need to watch, Real Housewives of Atlanta, So I realized that, I need them more than they need me. So this is like it's definitely a collaboration with them. So, which is, I hadn't done really previously also. So it's been a good experience too. And I always had a little problem because I actually did, I took a few pictures of like models and stuff in the past. And I never really felt I was that good at it because it was like, because so much of it is like the interplay with another person. It's almost like psychology and I'm not really, so this is a good experience for me. I think later on when I work with other people, I'll be able to understand them. Also, being in the photos, you realize, like, oh, I really look terrible in that. Like right now I'm looking at my hair that I haven't cut in like, 6 months. And I'm going, oh, it looks terrible, but, it's okay because everyone's hair is terrible. But, it used to annoy me in a way when other people were so vain about their picture. You look good, But when you're in the photo, you suddenly realize, like, you're using someone's image. You need to respect that. So I think, when I start taking pictures of other people, I understand more why they sometimes get a little self-conscious about stuff like that.
Wow. That's incredible that you've gone through like an understanding shift and like gone through so many shifts in this time.
Well, it's been like 5 months, but it really seems like 5 years. It's like my hair has gone like much grayer, And I don't know if this experience is unique to everyone, but I know I'm sure a lot of people, and as it's trickling down I'm curious now, like people who are in Texas or Florida now, where the brunt is hitting them now, whether it's affecting them psychologically and, what will happen in 3 months. I'm actually a little afraid of what's going to happen in fall because, what happens when everyone starts getting their flus and their colds and they're not sure it's and I don't know, I have my own opinion about sending kids back to school and whether that's a good idea.
Yeah, they here in Pittsburgh, no one's starting for at least the first 3 months. We'll see what happens after that. I know Vivian and I think Tiffany are in Florida, so at least we have 2 people on this chat from Florida.
Right.
So I mean,
yeah, I'm not gonna make any. I have a lot of friends in Florida, so I'm not gonna make any jokes about Floridians, but man, some of them are just so stupid. But
some are so smart. It's like
well, my mother lived in Boca Raton when she came back this year, so I know Florida pretty well. But yeah. Anyway, this is not a political thing, but I have a lot of opinions on that also.
Yeah, and I know like Vivian's been like quarantining like crazy in Florida, which must be really hard with the beaches. So
right.
Whole other situation when you've got a beach right by you and you're trying to quarantine.
Right. I mean, again, I can't emphasize I can't emphasize enough how my mother being here for this couple of months has changed things for me. I have a feeling if she wasn't here, and especially if like my ex-wife, if I was here by myself, I mean, I wouldn't be one of these guys who would be going to a bar, but I would be. I probably would be in the subway by now and being more riskier. This just gave me more insight into like, the people who are at risk more and like how we all have somewhat a responsibility to watch out. I mean, not only for old people, but people with, medical issues and, I mean, I live in Queens, and I think Queens was really hard hit because so many of the essential workers and the people who delivered the food and the nurses don't live in Manhattan. They live in Queens, and they take the subway back and forth. So, it's I think this has opened up a little bit of not only the racial issues, but economic issues where you can see, where not everyone is able to like move to the Hamptons for 5 months and just isolate themselves. So, the more people are more at risk, and it's usually the people who are working the hardest.
Wow. So, Lori says, I think the New York City experience was so different because we shut down early. Shut down entirely. I'm trying to read the whole thing, and it's like there's it's like over things. Let's see. I'm just trying. So entirely after being full of life, the emptiness and the drama of it's like all over white. That's why I'm like having a difficult time doing it.
No, I mean, I know Lori, and I know she lives in Brooklyn. It was just because it was earlier than some other parts of the country, other than maybe Washington State. No one really knew what was going on, really, and they really were like more frightful than maybe now. Like, when someone died on my floor, it was like all of a sudden like people were like afraid. You really didn't know what was going on, and it was like you felt that like if you would throw the garbage out, you had to put a hazmat suit on because you could just get infected and like die or whatever. I mean, a lot of these things have calmed down by now. But for that brief like month and a half, it really felt like you were in some science fiction movie, and all of a sudden, especially in New York or even in like any big city where people are congested, all of a sudden it's like what makes a city unique became like the scary part, other people, whatever. I remember like in the second month, I remember writing this on Facebook. I felt really guilty. There was an older woman. I was coming home from doing something. There was an older woman at the front door trying to get into the house, into the building. I live in an apartment building. She was struggling with the door, but her mask was like under her nose. And normally I would have went and tried to help her. But then as I took a step there, I realized, let this old woman open the door herself. It's like, I don't want to get anything from her. So I felt like an asshole the whole day. Like I basically, wasn't the Boy Scout. So all of a sudden you felt selfish because, you wanted to isolate yourself from other people rather than be next to them. So this is a recent photo that was sort of humorous, but sort of true, where I realized that like a lot of people have been gaining weight. I mean, I know that's like I had a lot of women, a lot of my women friends have been complaining about that. Like let's FaceTime. Oh, I can't go on FaceTime because I've gained 10 pounds. I'm one of the few people who actually have lost weight, and I think it's actually because of stress. So recently I decided to sort of exercise more. This was like a humorous attempt of showing that like I moved up to 8-pound weights, and
Wow.
and my mother doesn't give a damn. Basically, you know, I'm trying to show off my muscle. So, so yeah, again, it's like this was a real situation, and then I spent, oh, let's tell the story in a sort of staged way. You know, this
Can't.
is another example of exercise. For a while we put Pandora on every day at noon, and we danced. And this was an example. Oh, and you know, and we mostly liked like the disco channel. So this is me. So I said, oh, well, I mean, I should dress up as John Travolta. And then we realized I had nothing. I had no white suit. I had nothing white. So the only thing I had was this like white bathrobe that I think Sophia stole from like a hotel a couple of years ago. So like I put that on, and that would become, you know, with the black shirt. So that was like how we're dancing the disco, and that was, yeah. So we're trying, you know, this is us trying to. So all of these are from real stories, but I just recreated it, you know.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. We have like 4 minutes left. I don't know how much of the rest of your photos we can flip through a couple, but maybe just like,
This is just my regular stuff. That's like where my mother would usually go. That's like one of her senior centers. Look how much life there was. This is like not even that long ago. There was like some party there. And these are like all seniors, you know, and, you know, who knows, you know, if anything's happened to some of them, you
wow.
know.
Has she kept in touch with a lot of them?
That's one of the sad things I've written about. My mother has like a group of people she played cards with, and like one of them passed away, one of them is in assisted living, and one of them moved to another state just to be near her daughter. So that's what I'm saying. It's been a hard time for this age group because, you know, they're not, they're the ones who can least likely go out and enjoy life now, while gradually younger people are.
Right. And even
So,
to like know that they're going to see their friends in the future.
right. I mean, I've told my mother to start Zooming with her friends, but, you know, again, when you're in your 80s, the sort of the technology stuff, sometimes it's like, oh, I mean, look, I had trouble getting it on Instagram, and, you know, so, but anyways, my whole family is fine, knock on wood, so everything is good, and thank you for letting me, you know, show some of my work and talk too much about my, I'll send you the therapy bill you'll send me the therapy bill in the mail.
Yeah. So for everybody else out there, we're gonna this whole thing wraps up in a minute. Make sure to add both of us right up here. Add us later. I'm Aaron Jack. Find me at Aaron Jack Line Art, Aaron Jack and Photography. Neil, where can they find you?
My name is Neil Kramer, but my name on Instagram is Neilochka, Neilochka, because my ex-wife is Russian born, and Nilochka is like the Russian, like Mamacita type of thing. It's like
Ah,
little Neil.
cool.
So and I'm Neil Kramer everywhere else.
Excellent.
And thank you so much for letting me talk with you.
Yeah, thank you for talking with me and sharing. I've just found it so inspirational. I want to tell everybody. So Neil is part of uh, of a whole curation that I'm doing for Showfield. So that's August 25th at 5 p.m. This is 2020, this crazy year. So thank you, Neil, for being a part of that. So 5
Thank you.
p.m. Tuesday, showfields.com. I'm doing a live curation. Neil is part of that. Make sure to go follow both of us, and I'll be back at 5 p.m. with our next amazing guest. So this is a whole series this whole week with amazing photographers. Thank you, Neil, for being part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye bye, people.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.